Hello Horror Hounds, welcome back to our look through the films of David Cronenberg, and we've reached 1988, and a film that some people see as a radical change of direction, a sea change away from his horror roots. I'm not sure that the right turn is as radical as some people think, but let's delve into certainly one of his most effective and affecting movies. It's Dead Ringers.
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Briefly, the film concerns identical twins, the Mantle brothers, Beverly and Elliot, who run a gynaecological clinic in Toronto. We see them briefly as children and then as university students, where they've made their fortune designing a cutting-edge surgical tool that becomes the industry standard. And when the film proper starts, we meet them in a very controlled, hermetically sealed life, where the two of them together are essentially living one life. They'll often stand in for one another when they feel it's appropriate. Their patients don't really know which of the brothers are treating them at any given time. Elliot at the start of the movie is more confident, outgoing. He goes to the award ceremonies, he gives the speeches. Beverly is more insular, maybe more emotionally fragile, but he concerns himself more with the running of the clinic and the studies and publishing their reviews and findings. And all of this is running as smooth as clockwork in the as much as it can in the world of these two intellectual creatures who depend upon each other for maintaining this life that they've built. It's when one of the brothers falls in love that the equilibrium is radically shifted and things start to rapidly unravel and spiral out of control. This sense of control has been nothing but an illusion. Far from an about face, Dead Ringers seems to me like a logical progression to some of the elements he explored in The Dead Zone and The Fly. It's the final part of a very loose trilogy that concerns itself with love triangles, obsession, jealousy, and ends with death. When we first meet the Mantle brothers at the start of the film, they're young children, and straight away the conversation they have about working out why humans have sex, and it's because as a species we don't live in the water anymore, so we can't just lay eggs and then fertilize them from above. We have to, quote, internalize the water. Straight away, instantly suggests to us that these Mantle brothers have a clinical and intellectual approach to absolutely everything, including and especially the body. And if we've learned anything from the David Cronenberg movies that have come before, it's that if anyone challenges the status of the body and puts it beneath that of the mind, the body rebels. This notion of intellectualizing the physical and the bodies and properties of bodies is really hammered home in a line later on in the film, where one of the brothers says, "I've often thought there should be beauty contests for the insides of bodies, best spleen and things like that." I'm sure there's a Tales from the Crypt episode that is exactly that, starring Mimi Rogers. But here and in this context, we see, as we did with Seth Brundle at the start of The Fly, there's a man, in this case two men, with minds, and they feed and nurture their minds almost to the exclusion of their bodies. The way they treat bodies is as a puzzle, a process, things to be fixed like clockwork, things to be understood, mastered, and conquered. So once again with the David Cronenberg film, we get an upfront challenge to René Descartes and the notion of the Cartesian split. The mind is not the ghost in the machine, it's not the essence of someone piloting a meat machine, and the body wants its fair due. Now, in previous films, that would be expressed through disease, mutation, gene splicing, and the like. This time, And I think it's apposite because Cronenberg at this point in his career is distilling down and purifying his ideas. So we don't need disease or mutation or gene splicing here really to start that body revolution. It's something as fundamental and as well universally understood, although completely alien to the Mantle brothers, as love. Love is the mutating revolutionary element that gets added to the mix that throws this little petri dish of a film world into absolute chaos. And what better metaphor if we're moving away from extreme body horror and special effects set pieces? What better metaphor for the struggle between the intellectual, emotional and physical than love? We all know that love is a completely involuntary emotional endeavour that instantly affects and infects us intellectually and physically, depending on the kind of love you have. It certainly completely affects your thought processes. If it's reciprocated physiologically, you're full of endorphins, the rush, the physical upswing. If it's unreciprocated love, the sickliness, the languor, the physical pain you feel. This is Cronenbergian. There's one concession to his old style, and it's delicious. It's a dream sequence. Beverly dreams of being in bed with Claire Nouveau, the woman he's in love with, but Elliot's in bed with him as well, and they're physically conjoined. They're now Siamese twins. There's a fleshy umbilicus connecting them at the chest, and Claire leans across and bites into the umbilical cord with her teeth, literally separating the two. It brings to mind Samantha Egger at the end of The Brood, licking one of the birth sacs of the latest child of her externalized anger. The visual metaphor in Dead Ringers is a little on the nose, just as it was really during the maggot birth dream sequence in The Fly, where and in that sequence Cronenberg himself plays what else, the gynecologist. But I will forgive both of those dream sequences because they're both utterly glorious. Apparently for Dead Ringers there was a second dream sequence shot which featured a parasitic twin emerging from Beverly's stomach, but the sequence wasn't used after testing. It was removed. I think that's probably the right call, and it again is showing the development of Cronenberg's use of restraint with shivers. It was wall to wall. Whatever I can get away with, whatever we can do, we will put on the screen. He's being much more, if you'll excuse the pun with Dead Ringers, surgical, and it's a progression he's been making throughout his career about as and when to employ now these shocking things, and he'll do what's right for the project. And I don't think wall-to-wall splatter will have made Dead Ringers a successful film. This is a much more psychological, internalised film. And besides, that sequence is a good punchline. It lets off a little release. Horror's very much like comedy. You have the setup, the build of tension, and then the payoff, the punchline, the release. David Cronenberg clearly has a very dark sense of humour, and certainly towards its early stages, Dead Ringers is very funny. It's dry and it's dark, but it's there, and he's had humour in all of his films. I don't think I'm stepping out of line to suggest that British humour and Canadian humour is very similar. We tend towards perhaps the understated, the dark, the dry, and the iconoclastic. I'll tell you an element where I wasn't expecting restraint to play as much of a part, and I was really impressed with it, was how technically Jeremy Irons is able to play both the brothers, Beverly and Elliot. We've had split screen before. We've seen one actor play two different characters. I mean, my God, Disney's The Parent Trap. It's nothing amazingly new in and of itself. But yet for dead ringers, the use, and this is now very common, but at the time, a real technical achievement, the use of computer-controlled cameras, so the same shot can be filmed in exactly the same way, with exactly the same precise camera movements, for take after take after take, meaning that the camera can move. It doesn't have to be static, and you split the screen down the middle. You can move the split, so Jeremy Irons can walk through the scene as one brother, walk through the scene as another brother, as many takes as it takes. He can watch the first cut and then react to his performance that he sees on playback. And I really thought from faulty memory that David Cronenberg went hard on that, but he really doesn't. Apart from the start of the movie, where you see the young Mantle brothers played by actual identical twins, once Jeremy Irons gets into the role, it's a long time before you even see them in the same shot. They're both, ironically, cut off and separated in their own shots. Here's a shot of Beverly, here's a reverse shot of Elliot as they're having conversations. It's quite a long time into the movie until they're brought together into the same shot. And then it's the normal split screen we're used to. And then quite a long time after that before the technical trickery starts to slowly be employed in more complex shots. And by that time you're so completely immersed into the roles and the story that it's actually not about the technical wizardry at all. It's about the storytelling. The flashy, really impressive technical aspects of the film fade into the background. What a mastery of visual storytelling, that it's not all flash whiz bang, look at this fancy stuff I'm doing. And that has really helped the movie age superbly. He knows that his special effect, his really special effect, is Jeremy Irons. I think this is a lesson he learnt in The Dead Zone, and he said something along the lines of after when he was cutting together The Dead Zone, filming The Dead Zone, that he realised his greatest special effect, if you like, was Christopher Walken's face. And all he really had to do was put the camera on Chris Walken's face. He really is an actor's director, which is why watching his earlier films, it was so frustrating that he was restricted, shall we be kind, to the kind of actors he was able to get. And we would see as his films progressed, he would start to people the sort of cameo and peripheral characters with really skilled character actors. And it wasn't until The Dead Zone before he could front and center put a really truly charismatic actor at the heart of his story. Once he had access to those toys, that toy box, then the sky was the limit. You see him take off. So working with Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum, now working with Jeremy Irons, he just lets his actors fly. You just get sucked into Jeremy Irons' dual performances, and not enough can really be said about how good he is in this film. And again, Irons' performance is a textbook example of restraint. There are no grand gestures, there are no big, flashy, showy signals for which brother he's playing. They don't part their hair in different ways, they don't wear... One doesn't wear a crazy fucking Christmas jumper. Oh, there's Beverly with his crazy Christmas jumper. It's small things, always reduced down, internalized, and yet you know which brother you're looking at. You know which brother almost instantly is talking, right up until the point where the story wants to blur those lines. A couple of years later, Jeremy Irons won the Best Actor Oscar for his portrayal of Klaus von Bülow in Reversal of Fortune, and during his acceptance speech he very pointedly thanked David Cronenberg.
Thank you also, and some of you may understand why. Thank you, David Cronenberg.
And there's a reason for that. It's not all Jeremy Irons though. This is a three-hander. It's a three-handed film with two actors, and the second actor is Geneviève Bujold as Claire Nouveau, and the film wouldn't work if she couldn't hold her own against one actor, two characters. And she really does. She's the eye of this hurricane, this storm that builds around the brothers. She's the destabilizing element. Herself, very pointedly unstable, and I do wonder. She's a film star with her own issues, and the discrepancy between her public and private life. I do wonder whether Cronenberg is making maybe some sly commentary about Hollywood or the filmmaking biz and actors or actresses and their weird sort of split personality profession. And while we're talking about the ladies, it's long overdue for me to give a mention to Carol Spear, long-term collaborator with David Cronenberg in his art direction department. She oversees the looks of most of his films, and she has been creating these worlds that he builds in his mind and making them real on the screen. And here in Dead Ringers, she really ups her game. It's a cool and clinical movie about coldly intellectual people, and the movie itself is very austere, apart from, just like the dream sequence drops in just a little bit of the Cronenberg of old. It's an austere and clinical looking film apart from just bright spots of colour, the red cardinal surgical gowns that make them look more like more like cardinals, a cross between cardinals and cenobites than surgeons. And then the design, once Elliot starts mentally degrading those gynecological instruments for working on mutated women, is just another little punctuation mark in this film, just a stark visual flash to just pull you out of yourself. Very arresting items. Almost inevitably, Dead Ringers failed to garner immediately the same kind of appreciation that The Fly had generated 2 years previously. Time has been exceptionally kind to this pivotal film in David Cronenberg's career. It's now amongst one of his most admired. By placing aside overt horror, Cronenberg forged a human drama of genuine depth, a film that's painful to watch, yet entirely mesmerising. Icy cool and clinical, all the charges levelled against him by his detractors are present here and to the fore in Dead Ringers, yet at the same time the film is deeply emotional, tragic and incredibly moving. How has he managed to create this alchemy? How has he managed to fuse these two disparate elements together? A film that is so at odds with his earliest work and yet so completely in step with them as to seem inevitable. And where do we go after Dead Ringers? Join me next time for the, frankly, I don't know how I'm going to string words together about this film. It's out there, Naked Lunch.